some people will say, I really need to get this will taken care of. And it's true. That can be true. But what they're really saying is, I don't feel safe right now. Mm-hmm. And there could be like 10 or 12 things that might need to happen along with creating a will. That if we don't do more, if we don't do a lot of it, they're still not going to feel safe once they get it done. All right. This is a Ted Lasso quote session. Here's an idea that's going to help a little, hurt a whole lot. Who needs a drink? No? I think we're putting it out there for you guys. It's going to help a little, hurt a lot. One or the other, right? Sometimes the truth hurts. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Do the young man, old man quote thing. That was my favorite.
Ooh, that one was rough.
You just read that.
Where was it? You know how they say that youth is wasted on the young. Well, I say, don't let the wisdom of age be wasted on you. I just came up with that, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Oh, man. Ted Lasso. If y'all aren't watching it.
How do those relate to your financial picture? We're coming at you with that soon. Hold on. This one's from me to you, Bill. I got to say, man, sometimes you remind me of my grandma with the channel hopper. You just push all the wrong buttons. Oh, these are great. If you guys, I just Googled Ted Lasso quotes. Man. My wife would probably agree with that one.
That show is just such a feel-good show. And that we need more of that on TV and in our lives.
Got to be curious. Just be curious.
Yeah. So the goal of the show, this is another Ted Lasso quote, just found it. Our goal is to go out like Willie Nelson on a high. All right. Let's talk. What are we talking about? Look, chances are, if you're listening to this, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Reach out to us and let me know that I'm wrong. But my inclination is that you are working on something in your life. You're trying to achieve something, accomplish something, and this could be simple. This could be fitness. It could be your health. It could be
trying to get the cold stone before it closes.
It could be something big. It could be financial plan, like you want to achieve financial independence or work optionality. You want to make sure your kids are taken care of in a way. You want college funds. Like you have this idea of like a T-shirt that you want to make and sell, a company. You're trying to launch a business. Maybe you're trying to launch a podcast.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people about podcast ideas that they have, and I'm always like, why don't you just do it? Why don't you come in and use my equipment? Just get it out there. I think that'd be a great idea. So chances are you're working on something, and the nature of this conversation is on one side you have like the things that you want to do today in your life, whatever it might be. And then there is the other side of that stick that's just like actually getting it done.
Yeah.
Then in the middle, we have these roadblocks. And my challenge today is that the roadblocks that exist in keeping us from our ideas of what we want to do and actually doing them are oftentimes less about the roadblock and more about just our own fear.
Right.
And I'm just going to challenge that. This whole conversation is going to be on challenging you to get out from the security blanket that is roadblocks.
Yeah.
And push through it and get it done. And I was listening to a Carl Richards episode, and he was interviewing a financial planner. And so this podcast I listened to is basically about financial planners talking about financial planning and their ideas and how to grow the profession.
That's exhilarating.
I love it. This in particular, this guy was talking about how he wanted to launch a podcast.
Yeah.
And Carl was like, well, what's stopping you? And he was like, well, I just, like, I have all these ideas and I write them down and then I just want to tweak them and I have all these things. Like, I want to make them perfect.
Yeah.
And Carl Richards steps in and says, you know what? Like, I'm going to take some liberty here and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that you're fired from any part of the editing process that needs to go from where it's at right now to perfection. Like, that's not your job. Don't do it. Just get it out there.
Yeah.
And in pre-show, I was telling you, like, when I thought long and hard about how to launch this podcast and kind of what I wanted it to be. And, I don't want to say it's easy, but there's a kind of a simplicity behind just offering like the next tips and trick show, like, hey, subscribe and listen and we'll teach you 10 things to do over the next 10 episodes to 10x your whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's overdone. And frankly, I give financial advice like by the numbers every day. And so I wanted to go a little bit in a different path. And I was exploring this, and the idea was, hey, what if we just talked about how money makes us feel? What if we just talked about how finances makes us feel? Because what people are good at are coming in, and if I say, hey, move, $10 from this account to this account, or hey, let's go meet with an estate attorney to get your will set up. People are pretty good about understanding the task. But what they're not good at is coming in and saying, this is how I feel right now, and letting me then kind of come up with a solution that can solve the emotional side of what they're going through. Some people will say, I really need to get this will taken care of. And it's true. That can be true. But what they're really saying is, I don't feel safe right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there could be like 10 or 12 things that might need to happen along with creating a will, that if we don't do more, if we don't do a lot of it, they're still not going to feel safe once they get it done. And so the point is like, if you come in and you're able to tell me, don't come in and tell me, hey, I need a will, because we get the will done and you still feel unsafe. Come in and tell me how you feel, and give me time to like build something to solve the emotional side of what's going on.
Yeah.
And through that, we'll take care of many, many transactions that will be the evidence and the actual like blocking and the actual numbers of things.
Yeah.
To make you safer. But if we don't do a vast majority of this, chances are you're still not going to feel safe.
Yeah.
So we're still going to have the same problem. I say all that to say, I had this idea of that podcast, and I started recording several episodes, and I kept deleting them. And I'm like, it's just not quite right. I just need to do I need something more, right?
Right.
And the reality was, I probably recorded a dozen, maybe 2 dozen, 3 dozen shows that were all right.
Yeah.
And they probably could have helped somebody.
Yeah.
If I would have just put them out there, they probably would have been good.
Yeah.
For someone, and potentially could have changed their life. But because of me creating my own roadblocks, and why did I create those roadblocks? It had nothing to do. Like, I don't need 1 million subscribers, right? Like, guys, the goal of this show, like, would that be cool? Sure, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
But truthfully, the goal of this show, in my mind, I always have this visualization before every show that I'm sitting across from one person.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to one person.
Right.
And if I can affect or help or change the mindset of one person, mission accomplished.
Sure.
Right? So at the end of the day, I didn't need perfection. I needed it to get out, but my own fear of being seen as like an imposter, or my own fear of being seen as like not a professional studio whatever.
Yeah.
My own fear of being gauged as like, not great, kept me from impacting that person that needed to hear it.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about roadblocks.
Right.
And my challenge to you, if you're trying to accomplish something, is to look at these things standing in the way and say, hey, are these legitimate things that have to happen in sequential order or time triggered? Or did I just make a note on a piece of paper to give me one more thing to do so I'm not, getting it out there? So I can hide behind something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think you can apply that to a personal level. I mean, the first thing that my brain jumps to with that is I got a piece of really good advice from my father. I think I was back in college. And I just remember having this long list of all kinds of things that I needed to get done, things that I needed to do. Some really important, some not so important. But it was one of those times in my life that I felt like I was juggling 10 balls in the air at the same time. And I had a conversation with my dad and said, he asked how I was doing. I said, I'm just so crazy busy right now. And I described to him everything that was going on. And I said, I just don't, honestly, for one of the first times in my life, and I feel that I usually can prioritize pretty well. But I told him, I said, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much. And that goes into the overwhelming and fear emotions, is I don't even know where to start. And the piece of advice that he gave me was excellent. He said, just start. Pick one and start. He said, it may not be the right one, but pick something and start going and then prioritize later.
Yeah, I think that comes back to that whole momentum, and we had that call about the show about micro actions.
Yeah.
And there's just this contagious power, this magical power behind taking the first step.
Yeah.
We talk to clients all the time about setting accomplishable goals.
Yeah.
We've had conversations about tackling debt before.
Yeah.
And how sometimes it makes a lot of sense to pay off debts in order of highest interest rates.
Yeah.
From a mathematical standpoint, that's the smartest thing to do.
Sure.
But sometimes if you're a certain type of person,
Yeah.
maybe paying off the smallest debt first to create momentum,
Yeah.
could be even more substantial, because you're gonna create win,
Yeah.
and that win's gonna turn into excitement, and then you're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Where if your highest interest debt happens to be your largest, it could take years for you to get that first win.
And it's so silly too. I mean, I have this picture in my head while you're talking of me doing the dishes the other day, and it's so silly, the things that your brain puts in your way, but it really, it goes into all different parts of your life. Because I'm looking at the sink, and there is big pans in there. There's plates, bowls, you name it, it's in the sink. And I'm looking at it going, God, I just don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But it's got to get done.
Yeah.
Right. And so I go, all right, I'm just going to clean a steak knife. And I literally would play this game with myself. And sometimes I'll even, it sounds kind of crazy, but I'm going to clean dishes for 2 minutes and then I'm done. And what ends up happening, I end up cleaning the whole sink, but I started with a steak knife. And it's so funny to me how oftentimes in my own life, and I'm sure in your life too, where it's, if I just start, even if it's the smallest incremental step, a lot of those roadblocks that we envision, we tend to find that they're just illusionary.
So let's unpack that example that you gave. So you told yourself the dishes need to get done.
Yeah.
Why did the dishes need to get done?
Because the dishes were dirty and they were in the sink.
Right. So this perception of, hey, if I have a clean house, then I can call it a night. I can go rest.
Yeah.
Right. So the bigger thing here is I want to rest. I want to, kick my feet up, read a book, watch TV. I want to end my day. I want to wind down.
For me, is I want to earn that.
And so we know that there's things that we have to do to get there.
Sure.
And in that scenario, there's sometimes things that have to get done.
Yeah.
And they're not imaginary roadblocks. The dishes needed to get done.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to do the dishes, right? So what's funny is sometimes how much extra work we'll create.
Yeah.
Right? So in my job, right? Financial planning, like one of the things that I need to do daily, I need to call my clients.
Yeah.
And if you're a client and you're listening to this, I love every client that I get to work with. And honestly, that's true.
Yeah.
Like I really, really enjoy working for my clients.
Yeah.
That said, sometimes I am exhausted.
Yeah.
And I know, like, you're like, Brandon, you talk on this podcast a lot.
Yeah.
It sounds like you like to talk. And
We know you can talk.
And I do love to talk.
Yeah.
But sometimes some of us, like a lot of people, I mean, I work with counselors and therapists, doctors. I work with all kinds of people that have to have conversations through a majority of the day. And some days it's so hard to just talk.
Yeah.
And the other part about like picking up the phone, like I could have it in my mind, hey, I need to call this client and just tell them, hey, everything's going really well.
Yeah.
And I pick up the phone and I call the client and I'm like, hey, I just wanted to check in on you and let you know everything's going really well. Is there anything you need? And like, actually, my parent just passed away, or, I just got this diagnosis from the doctor. And it's like, that is not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Now I'm having to switch here. So like, I know that sounds pretty simple, pick up the phone and call people, because that is my job in a lot of ways. And that's it's rewarding financially for me to do these things.
Yeah.
It's important to maintain the relationship. It's important to give my clients rest. So much good comes out of me just picking up the phone and making phone calls.
Yeah.
However, sometimes I really don't want to. And what I'll do is like the amount of roadblocks that I will insert between me and actually just picking up the phone.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I got to call these 10 people and I know I want to talk about, this 1, 2, and 3 things.
Sure.
So I'm going to make an Excel sheet and I'm going to list their names and I'm going to put at the top, like, subject 1, subject 2, subject 3, so I can check them off as I call.
Yeah.
And what if they don't answer? I need to keep track of who doesn't answer so I can have like a did not answer list and like a date and time that I called. Guys, like I'm giving this example because I know I'm very, very guilty of sometimes creating these extra steps that are totally unnecessary.
Right.
But I think that if we all look back at like that thing that we're trying to accomplish, it's like, are we just truthfully adding extra steps? I have a close friend and a client who's working on starting a business, and she's got a lot that she needs to accomplish, but also it's like, you know what? Just go ahead right now and get your LLC. Just pay for it. Have an LLC. Like, just do that now. Let's do the other stuff right after that.
Yeah.
But let's just do it. Oh, no, I want to do this first. I really need to understand this person.
Sure.
I need to call this person to make sure this is in place. Do you really need to do that? What are you just kind of afraid to make it official?
Right.
In the email that we sent out, we talked about like the idea that some people, like you guys might be listening, have like this book that you've worked on for years and you've edited it and you've gone through it. And now you're just like, well, I don't know how to use like Courier New or Times New Roman font. I don't know which one's going to be most like best for the reader.
Yeah.
And so you're just, who cares? Just pick one and put it out there.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is like when we're growing up, we have these like security blankets, right? We got the monster in the closet that we're afraid of and we just hide under the blanket. And I think sometimes we can create our own roadblocks and treat those roadblocks like security blankets.
Yeah.
If you ask me, oh, hey, Brandon, when are you going to launch your podcast? Well, I really want to do this, and it makes sense. And it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Nobody questions it. But truthfully, if you actually pressed, you'd probably get to the point where like, I'm just kind of afraid to do it right now. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
And you sometimes need somebody to be like, hey, you're fired from that thought.
Yeah.
That's not your job anymore.
Yeah.
Your job is to put the business into the world, to put the book into the world, to put the podcast in the world. If your goal, like in terms of financial planning, if you're working towards financial independence and you want that work optionality, and you're just and this is true. People get close to retirement. Okay, I want to retire when I'm 62. And they're like 61 and a half coming in for meetings. And they're like, you know what? Actually, I think I need to do this, this, and this first. and then I can retire at like 63 and I'll have a little bit a better feeling about that.
Yeah.
You sure about that? Because it sounds like this, and this that you need to do, we can do today. Knock it out, and you're still retire at 62. Like, it sounds to me like you're a little bit afraid of hanging up. And guys, we've talked about fear in several shows. And here's the thing. It's important to acknowledge if you're scared of something, that is human nature.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I've been scared. I still get scared of things. It's just how we respond inside of being afraid that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And what we have to do as human beings is learn how to execute and dream and grow and go get after it and do the things we need to do in the face of fear. When we're uncomfortable, I think back to the Army days of like being cold and wet and tired, and I still have to go do this task. And I can't just kind of wing it. Like, I have to go and do it well.
Yeah.
So this mindset of like, hey, I'm terrified, but I can still perform. That's huge. That's everything, right?
Yeah. I think it's so much of the secret sauce is in our mentality and what we tell ourselves as well, and a lot of that can just be overcome with a little bit of positivity and a little bit. This just jumped into my head, but I watched Adam Sandler accept an award. I think it was like the Mark Twain Award for comedy, like Comedian of the Year or something like it. It's a really big, prestigious award. You have other people in your life come up and talk about you beforehand. And anyway, he was giving his little speech when he got his award, and he said, it was a very good speech. He gave all the credit to everybody else, pretty much. But one of the stories that I found was pretty funny was the first time he went to an open mic, because he started in stand-up. His brother took him, because I think he was like 16 or 17 years old. I mean, really young when he wanted to do this. And his brother took him, and Adam Sandler's up there saying, "Man, I bombed. Like, it was terrible." He goes, I did my 5 minutes, and it was like the worst experience. Nobody laughed, blah, blah, blah. But they get back in the car, and his brother's like, "Oh, man, you did amazing. Like, they loved you, man. You killed it." And he's just describing it like, "Really? I did?" Like, did we watch the same thing up there on stage? And he just had all these people in his life that anytime he thought he wasn't, doing well or up to it or perfect or something like that, he had all these people just talking him through it and just, "No, dude, you're great. Like, keep going." And now he's obviously hugely successful. And I think that's where a lot of people is that self-doubt and that fear creeps in. And sometimes you got to surround yourself with people that just say, "Hey, go for it." What's the worst that can happen? Go for it. Pick up the microphone, start the podcast, write that book.
And that comes back to that coachability theme, right? Is like having people around you in your life that you can listen to and put yourself out there to say, "Hey, like, I think it needs this, this, and this," and they're like, who cares? I brought this up funny enough today. I was like, "Hey, what do you think of our logo? Should we think about changing up our logo a little bit?" And that doesn't matter. Like, it's fine if we do, but it also isn't like anything to put on the table to prevent us from accomplishing other things that need to get done. It could be busy work instead of actually effective work.
Yeah, it's kind of like when your term papers due and you wind up cleaning your whole apartment instead.
That's a great analogy, because we've all been there, right?
I've done that.
So a couple things is like tip or exercise number one here is think through some major influences of your life. So, like, think about maybe your favorite book or your favorite poem or a person that gave you advice that had put your life on a different trajectory. That teacher that really spoke to you in your transformative years and made you like it just impressed something new on you. I think about these things, these books, these people in my life, and you have to pause and ask yourself, what if they would have put up a roadblock because they were afraid. One of my favorite books of all time is The Book Thief, and it showed me a perspective, a viewpoint on life from it was really just a change in perception, and it's a great story, but really just how it was conveyed made me think about something different. And so I saw life as this long process instead of something so specific and momentary. It was very, very impactful. And I read it when I was young. And the biggest takeaway from that, or the point of that is, what if the author had been, what if I published this in Courier New and they wanted Times New Roman? So I'm just going to hold on to this. What if I never read that? What if that teacher would have been like, you know what, I don't know if this thesis is perfect, so I'm just gonna wait a year. I'll submit it next year. I'll graduate a year later. What if our paths would not have crossed? Even in this podcast episode, what if we just would have been because we were kind of fumbling through some of these notes for this episode.
Yeah.
And it's just what if this one isn't the best show? But what if one of you guys listening was like, hey, that's actually, I've been struggling with this, and I know I'm putting off my biggest ambitions, my biggest dreams, my biggest things, these goals, these desires of my life by creating this busy work just because I'm a little bit afraid. And because of this show, you realize, hey, I can be a human being that operates inside of fear instead of being paralyzed with fear.
Right.
I think that's the question of how do I work inside of fear is a much, much more profound question than what font should I use.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're listening and you're in this space of hey, I have these financial goals or these life goals, or I have this career goal or starting a business, writing, but whatever it might be, do it. And if you can just sit there and write down the thing that you want to do on one side, and then the thing actually doing it on the other, and write down a list of things that's keeping you from that. If it's truth, get a coach, sit down with a friend. If it's truly something that has to happen, right? If I want to be a doctor, I can't just go be a doctor, right? I do actually have to go to med school.
Usually. Yeah.
Right? That's the right thing to do. But if I'm not going to med school because I need to make sure my closet's organized by color first.
Right.
Okay. Highlight one in green. That's actually something I have to do. But all the other stuff, all the yellow or orange, whatever color you decide to use, just get it off the list. Let's just get to actually doing it.
Yeah.
And guess what? If you put out your book and people are like, give it 4 out of 10 stars, get the feedback and write a better book.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
A wise man once said, I love making decisions. If I make a wrong decision, I'll just make another decision.
Oh, man. Guys, so, at the end of the day, what we want to provide you is permission to get it done. If there's things in your way, we want to fire you from doing those things. They're not your job. That's not your responsibility. Your job is to take that passion that's inside of you, the thing that you want to accomplish, and get it out in the world, because if you're listening to this, you can think of these monumental people, moments, books, poems, songs that have carried you through. Music is huge, right? And probably musicians might be the biggest critics of their life themselves, right?
Sure.
And if they chose not to get the music out there, I could, potentially millions of people couldn't get through that hard moment because they couldn't find the words to carry them through.
Right.
So put it out there, get it done, get after it, stop hiding behind that security blanket that we call roadblocks, and learn how to live and operate and function and even thrive inside of fear, because being scared is just a normal part of being human.
Yep.
Get after it.
Get after it.
Adios, guys.
We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment.
It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandan at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.